Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. We want to kick... Hello, can you hear me? Is that better? All right, awesome. My name is Paul Burning. I'm a St. Croix County Board Supervisor. I'm from Hudson, Wisconsin. I'm the chair of the admin committee. I would like to start us off, though, with the Pledge of Allegiance, if you wouldn't mind joining me. You're good, brother. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you all again for coming out tonight. I think we got a big crowd here, so we're going to try to get through people's questions. Congressman Tiffany asked if I'd just give you a quick update from the county's perspective, what we're working on, what we're trying to do, and bring you up to date on that. So we've got a few things that we have in the works that we can help with as far as the Xcel Energy Solar Project is concerned. One thing to note about county jurisdiction is counties do not have home rule. And what that means is, like a city and a village are able to zone and really govern over themselves for the most part. Counties are an offshoot of state government, and so we carry out, whether it's a mandate, a funded mandate, or an unfunded mandate, like law enforcement. We all love our law enforcement around here. We have an obligation and a duty, whether the state funds it or not, to provide ample level of law enforcement protection for the residents and the people visiting our county. That is no different with like Health and Human Services, and we've had a lot of interaction with them over the last 4 or 5 years. So the counties are really relegated to what the state allows them to do as an offshoot of state government. So I'm not going to tell you that our hands are completely tied in what we can do, but we are working tirelessly and turning over every stone we can in seeing what we can do to help make sure that this solar energy project doesn't necessarily, from my opinion, my stance, I don't want it coming to St. Croix County, and we're doing everything we can to make sure that it doesn't come to St. Croix. And so this isn't my town hall, this is Congressman Tiffany's town hall, and we appreciate the job that he does in DC. So with no further ado, I'd like to welcome Congressman Tom Tiffany to the great county of St. Croix.
Yeah, so great to be here in St. Croix County, and thank you to the New Richmond School District for hosting this tonight at the middle school. We really appreciate you opening up this wonderful facility to us, and it's great to be here. Before I start, there are a couple state representatives that are here. I think I saw Representative Tucker walk in. Representative Croix is here. Good to have both of you here, and I think Senator Stachel is here also. Good to have all of you here. And I want to thank law enforcement for joining us here tonight. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for the work that you do. Yeah, so we've been doing town halls today. Started in Ladysmith, went to Rice Lake, Amory, and now closing out the night here in New Richmond. And when I do these town halls, it's oftentimes just soup to nuts. We cover all kinds of issues, whatever you want to cover. I just thought with what is happening here in St. Croix County, particularly in this area, it might be good to focus a town hall in regards to energy, in particular the intermittent sources of energy, including solar facilities that are being proposed here in St. Croix County and across western Wisconsin, and I would say throughout Wisconsin. And I think it's a really good time to be talking about that, because it is a high priority of the incoming administration as well as Congress to make sure that we bring energy costs down. America can't prosper without low energy prices. If you look at our history, we always do best when you have low energy costs, brings inflation down and all the rest. So really important issue that we provide as affordable energy as possible. And I would just point to my right here. I've introduced this bill since I came into Congress. And by the way, thank you for the privilege of representing you once again for another 2 years whether you voted for me or not. I really appreciate the support, and thank you for putting your trust in me to serve for another 2 years out in Washington, D.C. It's really been a pleasure of a lifetime to be able to do that. And by the way, just one other aside, I was at the inauguration a week ago. What a humbling experience to be there in the rotunda when President Trump was sworn in. The music with the military, the military bands, as well as the closing by Carrie Underwood when she did America the Beautiful. I mean, it truly was a special time to be out there. I had never been to an inauguration before. My wife and a couple of my daughters were able to make it out, and we just had a great weekend attending the various festivities that were going on, and just to be able to attend that is just a real honor to be able to do it. So we go to work now. I've introduced this bill a couple times, and I'm going to introduce it once again this session. This is the Farm Act. The Farm Act, what it does is it disallows federal subsidies if you convert productive farmland into like a wind or solar facility. Producing energy in all of its forms is really important for America. As I just mentioned, if we're going to prosper, we have to have low energy costs. But there is one thing I believe that's higher on the list than the production of low-cost energy, and that's growing food. And this conversion, so it really concerns me, the conversion of this productive farmland that we're seeing across America, and we're seeing a lot of it in Wisconsin. I mean, there's thousands of acres that have been converted already, and we have thousands more that are on the drawing board to be converted, and a couple people that I've invited here tonight to share some of their stories and their insight, who've done a lot of work on this. They'll talk more about that. But introducing the Farm Act here tonight, we're also going to introduce a bill called the Power Act. And what that is going to do is disallow purchases by foreign entities to be able to put up these type of facilities. I think it's really important that we maintain domestic ownership of these energy generating facilities, because it is so important for the future of our country, for the safety of our country. So that'll be coming out here real soon also. So anyhow, with that, what I really hope to accomplish here tonight, invited a couple panelists to be with me. They're just going to speak for about 5 minutes, give you a little bit of oversight. I think they bring some expertise to this subject. And then we're going to take your questions. I think it's really important that you have accurate information, because with something like this, there's always speculation and all the rest. You see a lot of stuff that's going around. You want to make sure that it's factual. And I think Trin and Isaac here are going to be able to provide some of that information. So after they get done, then we'll take questions from the audience, and we really look forward to hearing your questions and your comments tonight. We're going to get through as many of them as possible. And I see one other person that is here I'm going to mention, Scott Bolstad from Senator Johnson's office is here. Thanks, Scott, for joining us tonight. Good. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to Trin Spindler. Trin is with the Wisconsin Advocates for Reliable Energy. I just know her as a strong advocate over in Marathon County, over towards Wausau. And but she's done a lot of work in this regard, and I'm going to turn it over to Trin for a few minutes, and go ahead and share a few of your thoughts.
Well, thank you, Tom, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out. Like I said, my name is Trin Spindler, and I'm a dairy farmer and leading community activist from central Wisconsin. Now, I might not live around here, but the fight that we're fighting is the same all over Wisconsin. And it's not just, you know, we're farmers and we're town supervisors and we're concerned neighbors. And it's not just Wisconsin, though. It's also Iowa, Minnesota, and nationally that we're all in this fight together. Now, weather-based energy has really invaded our communities here, and I'm so proud to be part of the people who are fighting back. We're instating town ordinances, zoning laws, and we're pushing the Wisconsin legislature to actually hear what it is that's right and try to do it. So I'm proud to work with the U.S. Congressman to end the Green New Deal and the Inflation Reduction Act to hopefully stop some of these subsidies who's really pushing the projects along. Thank you, Tiffany, for highlighting this issue. This is a huge issue across Wisconsin. So many people are crying out for help, So I think it's so important that we're all here tonight. As you all know, the government turns really slow. So I still urge you, as somebody in this audience, to fight locally. Make sure that you do something for your community. Don't wait for somebody to come and save you. My team have a variety of tools, which I'm bringing along today. I'm happy to share with you guys to help you do this fight. One of the first things you do is contact your local representatives. Super important. Tell them to vote for our rights to have local influence over what projects are being run. And then 2, join your local grassroots organizations and help them out. Spread the news about what's going on. And thirdly, I'm asking you guys to join our statewide organization called Concerned Citizens of America. It's CCOA-WI, so that we can all band together and fight this together. Now, 2 years ago, I was really happy farming in central Wisconsin with my hobby, until a neighbor posted on Facebook that Alliant Energy had showed up on her farm with a wind contract, and they asked her to sign this contract. So we dug into it, we took a look at it, and we found that it was extremely one-sided. So we did the thing that good neighbors do, and we went out and told our neighbors about what was going on. Then we proceeded to tell our town board what was going on, because nobody had contacted them yet either. This led to us passing our first health and safety wind ordinance. That was in April of 2023. Now, when we passed that, a majority of the township around us also passed it, all but an overwhelming majority in each township. Now 2 of our townships in Marathon County are being sued by Marathon Wind LLC, which is EDP. The one win we've gotten out of this trial, who has just entered the discovery phase, is that the justice said that they cannot proceed with building this giant wind project until the final judgment is done. So as of right now, nothing is being built in Brighton and O'Plain. Now, we both have a wind and a solar ordinance, and they're both built over the Wisconsin State Statute 66.0104, and we started with the exceptions in there. Now, it says that you may not restrict any weather-based energy project any more than what the law says, except when it comes down to protecting the health and safety of the people. So we went to the Wisconsin lawyers in Madison, and they agreed with us that there is gray area in the law, and that's how we build our ordinances, which is also why you're seeing it in a lawsuit today. Now, our solar ordinance touches a little more on things like mining of topsoil, the setbacks, and water safety. But we can talk about all that when you guys have questions. Now, in closing, I'm here to encourage you to fight, and fight really hard. Educate your residents. Do not sign these contracts. Your first and best defense is not to sign up your land. Secondly, adopt the ordinances. Change your zoning laws. Go over your comprehensive planning. Any speed bump in the way is only going to help you. And third, talk to your legislators and have them vote through bills that will be coming through the Wisconsin legislature, giving back local control over these projects so that we have a fighting chance to even have a say in what things get built or not get built in our communities. Lastly, I'll ask you again, please join our statewide organization, CCOA-WI, so that together we can share knowledge and we can fight united.
Okay, thank you very much, Trin. Next, I'd like to introduce Isaac Orr. He has a firm called Always On Energy Research, and he's done a lot of work on this issue, including some of you may have heard of the Center of the American Experiment in Minneapolis. Isaac worked for them for years, and now has spun off to having his own company, Always On Energy Research. Go ahead, Isaac, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks everybody for having me. I grew up in Wapaka, Wisconsin on a dairy farm. We had 40 head, 500 acres, so really understand what's happening here. And the main issue here is Xcel Energy is shutting down its coal plant about 12 years before it was supposed to, and that's the A.S. King plant over on the the western side of the river. So they're deciding that they want to shut that down prematurely, and they're saying that they're going to use solar to replace that. And the problem with that is the solar facilities are more expensive and less reliable than the plant that they're shutting down prematurely. So the move makes no sense because the regional electric grid that we belong to, so that includes Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, it basically goes from Minnesota down to Mississippi, is at the highest risk of rolling blackouts in the entire country. So it's the North American Electric Reliability Corporation says that this region could have blackouts as soon as this year because we're shutting down too many coal plants and we're replacing it mostly with unreliable energy sources like wind, solar, and battery storage. So this is a clear and present challenge, and it's only going to get worse because Xcel wants to have at least 1,300 megawatts of data centers on their system too, but they keep shutting down their coal plants. So the question is, are they going to get power and we won't? Will we only get electricity if the wind is blowing and the sun is shining? So that's really what we're dealing with here. So when we look at the King plan, like I said, it could have run until 2040. It had been updated recently, but what was that?
It was supposed to.
Yeah, it was supposed to run until 2040. And part of this is because Xcel is, it's not a private company. So one of the things that gets me is when I talk to legislators, especially Republican legislators, they say, well, the utility company is a private company, so we're not going to get involved in their business. And that's absolutely wrong. They're a government-approved monopoly utility with the exclusive right to sell electricity in their service territory. So you don't have a choice. And because they're a government-approved utility, they don't have the right to set their own electricity prices because it wouldn't be fair. So what they do is they have something called a cost of service formula, and the price of electricity is set by the Public Service Commission. I'm not going to bore you with numbers here, but what the formula says is anytime a utility builds something new, whether that's a coal plant, a natural gas plant, a wind or a solar facility, they get to earn their money back. They get to charge you enough for your power to make their money back, plus a return, plus a profit for the company, for the shareholders. And every year that an asset is in operation, it depreciates and they earn less profit on it. So Xcel wants to shut down all of their reliable power plants that have been paid off for years and replace them with new stuff. And the fact that wind and solar don't work very well is even better for their profits because they get to build a wind facility, a solar facility, and probably a natural gas facility to back it up. So you all have to pay for that. And just when you talk about the economics of this solar facility, it's not very good. Xcel says it's going to be $100 million for these 74 megawatts. I ran some numbers this afternoon. Without government subsidies, this is going to be $90 a megawatt hour. And the coal plant last year produced power for $44. So we're paying twice as much for the power, and it's not as reliable. And even when you factor in the subsidies, it's still $66 a megawatt hour. So you're paying more even after they're picking your pocket from the federal tax side. And you're also going to be paying more as ratepayers. And the subsidies for this are huge. I ran the numbers on this afternoon. It amounts to $50,000 an acre in subsidies, federal subsidies that are coming. So that boils down, if you assume a 25-year lifespan for the solar facility, which, if you believe that, I've got a bridge to sell you. That's $2,000 a year. I mean, I'm pretty sure nobody here could afford to rent cropland or pasture land for $2,000 a year. So the other thing, solar's not exactly the best, or Wisconsin's not exactly the best place to put a solar facility. I know you guys are probably really shocked by that. But in January, solar facilities only produce 5.8% of their potential output. So yeah, if you had a 100 megawatt facility in the winter, in January you're probably getting 5.8, and then in December it's 5.1. It's better in July, but we need power year-round here. So yeah, with the data centers, we already talked about the profit motive. So I think with that, we can probably turn it back over to Tom for questions.
Okay. Very good. So let's do this. If you have a question that you'd like to pose, we've got microphones here at the stage. Come on up and share your question or comment that you'd like, and we'll start in. Tell us your name and the issue, or share your question.
Well, thank you for having this forum. I think it's really important for everybody. My name is Paul Sheppelman. Work a lot with conservation groups around the state of Wisconsin. My concern is that these groups have kind of been co-opted by a lot of climate alarmists, and we're not really seeing where this is all leading us. We're talking about a 5,000 acre project here, 6,000 in central Wisconsin. These are all adding up. So I started doing some writing, started doing some reading, and I'm seeing some of the estimates are putting at 340,000 acres across the state to meet Governor Evers' goal of 30% solar. And that's assuming it all works. So for Isaac or for you, Congressman Tiffany, how do we get this message out, especially to sportsmen, that are maybe really concerned about other issues, that we're going to be losing a lot of land, like 340,000 acres. That's about, it's just under the size of St. Croix County. So your whole county, 8-foot fences, nothing's growing, there are no animals. It's hurting more, the farms itself, but habitat for animals, migration patterns and everything. So what can we do to make sure that the message is getting out to them, that we need to ensure that we have reliable, traditional energy, and the trade-off is losing all this land?
So I would say to you, we're going to, and that's the purpose of this hearing, is to make sure that people are aware. I mean, people have been contacting our office regularly, and I wanted to make sure that we were talking about what is actually happening on the ground. But I have a question back to you. So I take it you're a sportsman.
Yep.
You hunt, stuff like that.
Correct.
What do you see happening? So let's say you have a 600 acre block, a 1,000 acre block. What's going to happen to that wildlife?
So I started driving around to look at where these existing solar farms are. They all talk about how they're planting pollinators and all these specific plants underneath the panels.
May I correct you for just a second?
Go ahead.
I forbid anyone to call this a farm. It's an industrial facility. It's an industrial facility. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's very fair. It's a good correction.
Program.
There's nothing growing. There's 8-foot fences. There is dead soil that's not really turning over. A lot of it's invasive because that's all that can grow if anything's growing. There are no animals. There are no birds. It's just blocked off. You have no access. You're limiting wildlife. You're limiting migration patterns for a lot of things we like to pursue and also just enjoy seeing on our great landscape here.
Have you done any review in regards to, so we know that there's silver and other metals that are used in the production of, for example, wind turbines, solar panels. Wind turbines, the average wind turbine was at 7,000 pounds of copper go into every wind turbine that's built. Has there been any research that's been done into these metals, and are there some trace elements that perhaps people should be concerned about?
Yeah, I think it's a little ironic. A lot of the traditional panels, especially the ones we source from China, have the same composition of PFAS that we're finding in our soil and spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to reclaim. So now we're willingly putting these back into the landscape with no way of recycling them from what I've seen. And you look at Europe, the only thing they figured out on how to get rid of solar panels is burning them. That's it.
So should there be an environmental impact statement that is done?
At a minimum, yes.
They are supposed to already do that, and they do not.
Correct.
So Trin, how do you know how do they get around that if it's not being done?
The PSC, they don't do anything.
So how does the PSC absolve them of the, do you know how they absolve them of the?
I can try to tell you what I know, because I am just a layman like everybody else around here. So the PSC is set by Tony Evers. Tony Evers, as we all know, is very green, and he's going to do everything to make this go through. So the people he put on this panel are all his people, and most of them are former energy executives. As what we are seeing from some of the people that we have had go in front of the PSC is that when we bring claims in front of them, it does not matter. They have their way, they're going to do it their way, no matter the evidence we put in front of them. We had somebody go up and report on her stray voltage issues, and she was completely dismissed. There's no environmental impact statements. There should be, but there isn't.
How do they get so much power?
Well, I think what Trin is saying is that, so the Public Service Commission is a 3-person commission set up that is the governor appoints. I believe there's Senate approval on those appointees, and but once they're appointed, They have tremendous authority to be able to do just about what they want to. I guess it would be worth looking into, I think, for our legislators, if how they can get around doing at least an environmental assessment, at least doing an EA versus an environmental impact statement.
So that is one of the things we're doing in central Wisconsin. Representative Karen Hurd is actually going to be someone oversight on the PSC and the Windside Council, and she's just a district over from us. So we are working with them and making them aware of the things that are not being done, and she is saying that she will look into it. But again, this still needs to come from the people up. So when you ask what it is you can do as we go forward, you have to work with the rest of us out here, and with the knowledge that you have, it'd be really great if you share that with the rest of the group, and we will together build a plan that we can take in front of those legislators, which is what's being done. People are going to start going knock on doors.
Ma'am?
Yes. Do I need to turn this on?
It should be on. I'll turn it up right here.
Okay. So I've, can you hear me?
No, it was working earlier.
Okay. All
Get
right.
real close and talk.
All right. I project too. So.
There you go.
Okay, so Trent, something for you, if you want to maybe look into this a little bit more. The IAIS, which is the International Association of Insurance Supervisors,
Okay.
is the primary non-U.S. entity setting global standards for insurance supervision. We do not set our policies, or U.S. insurance policies are not officially held to their standard, but they're kind of looked at as the leader. And they have categorized EMF in the same unknown damage, unknown liability category as asbestos.
Mm-hmm.
So if these organizations cannot get insured for EMF damage, will they be put to a halt because they do not meet local or state or federal regulation? Also, if you're not insured, you're not bonded, which, you know, Mr. Tiffany, you understand bonding and, you know, being in office, that's a magic word. So maybe this would be a place to find some information, and you can use that to kind of help.
What's the acronym EMF?
Electromagnetic frequency.
Okay.
So this is not along with the groundwater, the PFAS, everything.
Right.
This is what is the electric current
Yep.
doing to everybody around them.
Right.
So they are probably insured for the panels, damage to the panels, but not what is the panel doing to everybody around them.
Right.
Right, to us. On the flip side, I very much believe that a landowner has the right to do what they want. So I'm really torn on this because I don't want more government regulation, and I don't want the government to protect me. But something, Mr. Tiffany, that you could maybe help me understand is if we just do a single subject bill, defund the Green New Deal, defund any subsidies, grants, loans, money, anything that has any type of fiduciary language to it, just that one. Don't let anything else get into that bill, just the single subject. Take away their money. They're not in this to not make money. So if you could help me understand
Sure,
if
sure.
that's a possibility.
I could address that. And I think it's really very fair on your part to say you're torn by this because it's property rights and things like that. And by the way, the farmers are not the bad guys in this. I mean, think about it.
Right.
Rent for farmland is generally what, $150, $200 an acre in Wisconsin, something like that. And when you're being offered $1,000 an acre, and Rob, how much are soybean prices right now?
They're fantastic.
Corn price is $3.
We just hit
340.
What's that?
We're up to 4.
You're up to 4. So, you know, I mean, I grew up on a farm here in western Wisconsin. I know what a challenge it is to be able to make it farming. So I don't blame farmers when somebody comes up with a 25-year contract and they want to pay $1,000 an acre. I get it. I get it that you may do that. But I think it's incumbent on us policymakers, is that the best thing for America? Is that the best thing that we should be doing in regards to energy production, and is it the best thing to be doing for farmers in the long run?
Right.
And I just don't agree with that, because I mean, we have to have people that are producing food in America. It's the one thing that we still do at home here, versus so many other things that are farmed out to foreign countries, where we get all of our blood pressure medicine from China, for example. And so I think it's really important that we produce that food. To your question, gosh, I'd love to if every bill that we did in Congress was a single subject bill. But by the way, just this is an aside. When we had the big fight in regards to Kevin McCarthy becoming Speaker back, you remember 2 years ago, and it took 15 votes, that's in part what that was about. We were saying, we want assurances that we're going to get 72 hours to read a bill, and also that they're going to be single subject bills. Now, being an imperfect institution, we haven't kept it all the single subject bills, but it's been much better the last couple of years since then. And it would really be nice if we do that. It's really difficult for us to statutorily pull those subsidies away. Once those subsidies are out there, I mean, take a look at ethanol. You can't go to Iowa now and campaign and not talk about, I'm going to save ethanol. And you have, I think this is turning out to be somewhat similar, really difficult to pull them back. But I think this administration understands that this is enormous subsidies. It's contributed to the $36 trillion that we're in debt. I mean, think about $50,000 an acre. $50,000 an acre is the subsidy that is being paid, and it's going to these, it's going to wind developers. And, you know, it's the well-connected that end up getting these contracts. I mean, they understand what how the tax code has been changed and how you go through the machinations of making this happen. And so it's people that are looking for tax breaks and things like that that oftentimes end up being the developers of these projects and go out and seek to get them done. And they can do it because the federal government has said, yeah, this is okay to do it. So we're going to do everything that we can to pull those back, but I think it's going to take a significant amount of I think the success here, if you define it as success, is going to be the Trump administration pulling back from these subsidies as much as they can administratively, because it's starting to get embedded, and it'll be difficult to get Congress to get a majority of votes in both houses to be able to pull those back.
If I could just, and I promise this will be the last one, then is there a way that not affecting somebody's choice to do what they want to do with their land, the fact that the money's already there, can they be required to be transparent on where their money's coming? Because Excel has not answered our questions on where are they funding this, and we know that they're getting money, but they won't answer our questions. So
you might want to touch on that, Isaac, but I would just say also that we have a bill that would take that back. It's a separate bill that I'd be talking about here. But anyhow, the main thing that we propose so far is just the Farm Act, removing the subsidies if you're converting productive farmland.
Yeah, I mean, Excel has a lot of institutional investors that are very interested in this. You know, you have the big firms like BlackRock and the other ones, and they like the fact that they get tax credits. So a tax credit is better than a cash payment, because if you have a high tax liability, if you got a cash payment, you'd have to pay taxes on that. So you have these big ESG investors that are pushing the utilities. They're large owners in the utilities, and that's probably where they're getting a lot of their financing, and that's where the pressure from the utilities is coming from. And they want to have a high return for their shareholders, even though that's not what's best for the ratepayers. Congressman Tiffany, I think you should tax any wind and solar project that's taken federal money. And you know, $5 a megawatt hour, we could all get a nice little tax break here. So I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. I want to see it introduced. I want you to pass it for me, because I made the drive over here, and I think that's fair. I will never be invited to one of these again.
No, I'll find out which one of my staff invited.
Yeah.
Congressman Tiffany, congratulations on your re-election, and thank you for your service to our community. We do appreciate it. We notice the work you do. My name is Paul Kluskowski. I've been in this community for about 4 years now. I also have the honor of having been a 25-year commercial nuclear power veteran, almost exclusively in the operations department. I hold the distinction of being the youngest man ever in this country to be licensed by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to stand at the panels and run a 2,500 megawatt nuclear reactor for a living.
Give him a round of applause.
I can tell you for a fact, I know what it takes to make electricity, and I know what it takes to deliver electricity to the customers. To keep it simple, electricity rolls downhill on bars. People don't understand that, but steam plants are the ones that can deliver bars. Nuclear, coal, natural gas, oil-fired. When things get tough out in the grid, the big plants have got to boost voltage, and you gotta open the steam valves. You just gotta push harder to hold the grid up. Texas could not hold the grid up a number of years ago in the midst of a blizzard. It was South Texas nuclear plant coming out of an outage that saved them down there. Those operators recovered that unit on short notice, and that's not an easy task. Although the solar panels were getting bashed with ice and hail. So regardless of the, I'll call them perverse incentives that are offered to landowners to take this deal, I would ask those landowners, can you really look your neighbors in the eyes and in good conscience take that money?
They'll be employed or they won't have to.
You know, but that doesn't make it right. I mean, quite frankly, it just doesn't make it right. And these are our neighbors that are facilitating this by allowing these panels to be put on their fields. And I think we need to talk to our neighbors about these things politely. There's lots of things any one of us could do for more money, to make more money. I'm a tax guy now. There's things I could do in the tax business to make more money, but that doesn't make it morally right if I'm coloring outside the lines and having an adverse effect on my community and my neighbors. Some money is not worth it. Money is not everything to us. And so, please help us, coach us, and give us some resources to really help keep Wisconsin a very nice, rural, agricultural, small neighborhood kind of place.
Let me defend some of those neighbors you're referring to. When zoning is put in place saying you got to have a minimum of a 5-acre lot in order to sell off a piece of property, and you can't do like 5 1-acre lots. You're limiting that farmer in the ability to be able to use his property. So there have been limitations that have been put on farmers at times that I'm not sure are always being considered. And so I will defend them to a certain extent. I understand your point. I agree with you. I think you should go talk to your neighbors. And I think that's a very good idea. The final comment that I would just make, Paul, is I think that nuclear is something that it's time, I'm hoping, has come. Yep. In regards to the modular nuclears, and I don't know what you think of those, but I think that there's great possibilities with the modular nuclear reactors, and I think it's time for that to come to the forefront once again, because if you believe climate change is real, man is causing it, carbon is a problem, there's only one way you can do it, and that's with nuclear, right? That's the only way you can do it if that's what you believe, and if you believe lights need to stay on 24 hours a day, it's your only choice is to go that route, and I'm hoping that we're going to see a resurgence in nuclear, and part of the reason that I like the modular, which are much smaller facilities, you're not the big, massive nuclear facilities, and I'm stepping out on a limb here, you may saw it up behind me with much greater expertise. I like it in that it spreads risk. And that's what we always try to do with, I mean, regardless of how we produce energy, I mean, there's risk with everything, right? And I believe by building multiple facilities, I think you spread risk throughout a region, amongst states and stuff like that. That's part of the reason I like that, rather than massive nuclear plants.
One counterpoint to your point, and I'll be brief. There are limits on what all of us can do with our land, because we want to keep our communities nice. You can't just put a junkyard anywhere. You can't just put a landfill anywhere. The community should have a say in what happens in our community, because we're the ones that are going to bear the brunt of it, not Excel Energy out in Colorado. And I worked for Excel for a number of years. I know who they are. They're very fiscally responsible. I do respect them for that. They're very good with money. But they don't have to live with their decisions. We do. And that's where I believe the community gets to have a say in what our neighbors are doing. So thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, and honestly, we might not be having this conversation right now if Minnesota didn't ban the construction of new nuclear power plants in their state. So they could put a nuclear power plant at the King site and upgrade it, and then we wouldn't be having this conversation at all right now, because they would be building something reliable, affordable, and carbon-free. But that's not what when the Democrats, they won a trifecta in 2022, they passed legislation, and Republicans offered amendments saying, hey, we'd like to include nuclear power in this because it's the only thing that makes sense. And they said, no, we're only doing wind, solar, and battery storage. So now you all are being asked to host the unrealistic green fantasies of Minnesota lawmakers.
Good evening, Congressman Tiffany. My name is George Zaski. I'm going to take this opportunity and segue out of power because I'm a disability advocate, and I'm a parent of a son with a disability, and I understand that Congress is contemplating something like a $2 trillion cut to Medicaid, and I'm against that. And I'm curious about your perspective on what that kind of cut could have to vulnerable populations as well as rural hospitals, which I think there are probably a lot of in the 7th District.
There are, there's no doubt about it. So his question is in regards to the word about a $2 trillion cut to Medicaid. And so first of all, remember, whenever they do these numbers, they do them over 10 years. So it isn't like a $2 trillion cut annually. It comes to about $200 billion. What's really important is to understand what's behind the numbers. There's a number of ways in which Medicaid is being abused. Now, Medicaid in Wisconsin, that'd be referred to as Badger Care. Badger Care is the Medicaid program that we have in the state. There's an enormous amount of fraud and waste that is going on. We want to get at that. For example, there's just recently an article, and you can find this in the Washington Times, by a writer named Stephen Dinan, D-I-N-A-N. And he wrote about how there's hundreds of billions of dollars that are going to foreign actors. And the Russians, Chinese, and others have become very good at propping up organizations where they go and set up accounts where they funnel money out of our system, whether it's Medicaid, food stamps, things like that. But anyhow, where they can grab money and then they send it overseas. There's a tremendous amount of money that's going overseas, and there's no reason for that to happen. And we want to get at that fraud that's going on that is such a serious problem. Also, I just mentioned food stamps. While it's different than Medicaid, but that'd be a good example of where we're trying to root out fraud, unnecessary use. We've got about 10 million people that are able-bodied in America, that are American citizens, that could be working. And a lot of them are on food stamps. We believe they should work, that they should not be taking money from the taxpayers when they could be taxpayers themselves by going out and working. So we're not going after those people that legitimately should get that money, like you're referencing. We all believe in helping those that need a hand, but we don't believe in helping those that are abusing the system, and that's what we're trying to get at.
If I could ask for a clarification,
Yeah, go
but I'm
ahead.
trying to find them with your comment about, and I believe there's a waste, fraud, and abuse in the system. I just read an article similarly where $2 billion was wasted in Arizona with their alcohol and drug abuse system.
Sure.
But how does cutting funding get at the waste, fraud, and abuse?
That's
Because
what-
I'll also throw in that, I don't know, 12 inspector generals just got fired on Friday.
Yeah, we're getting at where that is. It's one of the things I think you're going to see the Department of Government, what's
Diligence, government
yeah, yeah.
efficiency.
What's the E? The E is efficiency. Yeah. I think it's one of the things that I think Elon Musk is attempting to get at is our systems, our tech systems in the federal government are very antiquated. This would not be hard to find these foreign actors that are taking money if you just had the right systems in place. And I think that's one of the things that he's going to be seeking doing. I'll give you another example, and once again, this is outside, but it talks about fraud. Many of you have seen the Feeding Our Future stories over in
Yes.
Minnesota. $250 million in, what is it, 250 going on 500 million? Something like that. Money going to Kenya, places like that. And we really need to get at that because Americans should not be sending their money overseas. And if we just took care of the bad actors that are overseas, I think that'd be, I mean, if somebody's an American and they're heisting the system now, you know, that's one thing. That's a great American tradition. But we should at least get it from the foreign actors and not allow them to be able to get the money. So, anyway.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. My name is Robert Cizik, and I want to thank you for dedicating some of your time to come down here and hold this town hall. This is very good. What I'd like to talk on is I'd like to echo what Paul just said about nuclear. You know, I recently heard Kevin Birdwell, he's a air quality scientist, say that if the United States was going to power its grid with solar only, it would require land twice the size of Texas to do that. And that wouldn't be reliable, but that's what it would require. What I'm saying is that to get around this problem of cheap energy, reliable energy, let's put in these thorium molten salt chloride reactors. Okay, like you're talking about the small modular stuff. This stuff it can't go anywhere right now because the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is basically blocking it all. So if we could have some help on a congressional level to take care of the NRC, that would allow this stuff to move on, to move forward.
Yeah, let me answer your question there, Robert. So I think you'll see a change in the Nuclear Regulatory Commission now with the new administration, and you'll see new members, and hopefully we'll see a new attitude in regards to that. Thanks. Thanks so much. Sir?
Yeah, good evening. My name's Dan Weatherly. Thank you so much for being here. I do have that I'd like to hand to you a petition here signed by about 4,800 of your constituents, many of whom are probably in the room here, opposing the XL Energy solar, industrial solar complex. I won't call it a farm. And I can email it to you because there's some really good links in there in terms of studies and articles. But I mean, this solar complex is an ecological disaster for St. Croix County. It's also a health and safety and financial disaster, quite frankly. And there's a lot of good information in there, but you'll see in there's been multiple settlements with the EPA and these solar farm constructors and operators for violations of the Clean Water Act, multi-million-dollar settlements, historic settlements for polluting water, well water, rivers, streams, lakes, right? So it's an ecological disaster. Solar farms also present a heightened fire risk. That's something a lot of people don't talk about. There's studies in there that show that. But there's also an article in there where the governor of New York had to order a shelter and place order for the citizens because there was a solar farm fire. So people within a mile of that solar farm complex were basically prisoners in their home because of the toxic smoke that was billowing into their community for days at a time. But the other thing where it gets kind of personal is in that petition you'll see there's a map of the northern portion of Hammond Township in St. Croix County. The yellow on there represents the solar farm that XL wants to install. The non-yellow, which there's not much of it, but there's 4 residential developments in St. Croix County that they want to surround on all 4 sides with their solar farm complex, right? So you're going to have millions of solar farm panels, inverter buildings, service roads, industrial fencing, and a substation, a 20-acre substation that is going to completely surround these residential subdivisions. So it constitutes a health and safety risk, but it also constitutes a massive risk to their property values. So the last thing I would mention, and I just had one question, is there are studies, XL will say, all the studies say there's no evidence of property degradation from solar farms. That's complete nonsense. There's 7 studies in there that show a 7% reduction in property values for houses within, I think, 3/4 of a mile of these solar farm complexes. But it's a massive threat, both ecological, health and safety, and economical for the residents of this county. But the one question I had for you, and I do appreciate your time and everything you're doing for us, is in addition to the Farm Act, which I think is a great step forward and certainly will support that, what else can your office do for the residents to try and pull back subsidies, initiate other efforts to shut this down, to stop this solar farm complex from being installed in this county? Just curious to know what else your office can do. Thank you.
Well, I received a directive from Mr. Orr to my left for a bill that I'm supposed to introduce. So we're starting there. And you know, I think so much of it is just pushing back at this point, is not saying we simply accept this. Because I do think it's not the right public policy for America. I mean, to me, it's not just lose-lose, it's lose-lose-lose-lose. This is being produced in China. So while China's building the coal plants that some are saying, we gotta get rid of all of our coal plants here in America because of climate change, yet China's building coal plants. And what do we get in? They get reliable baseload power. What do we get in return? We get an intermittent source of power. We get higher utility rates as a result of this. Isaac, I think, laid that out quite well, that utility rates go up as a result of this. I mean, look at the Public Service Commission, what was it? 4 or 5 months ago, they proposed, what, a 15% increase, Trim, I think? Something like that. So we're getting higher rates as a result of it also. And then you get farmland that we're losing, that I just think it's so important to preserve the farmland that we have here in America. I mean, there's going to be some expansions in various ways, whether it's residential or industrial, stuff like that. But I mean, this is a massive expansion that is hundreds of thousands of acres by the time it gets done. So I just think it's a lose-lose-lose in so many ways. And the most important thing that I think I can do is just be a messenger in that regard to get answers. Because if I'm wrong, come and tell me why I'm wrong about the stuff that I'm saying.
Right. Thank you.
If anybody's curious what that project looks like, there's one up by land right now. It's sucked up all the land around that town. So if you want to see what that should look like before you're right up there.
Sir.
I'm Mark Duncan. I'm conflicted on this whole thing because of my situation. I have a rental property that's out in the Prairie County, right out by the Casey Lake area out there. Hopefully they don't put these things out in that particular area because it's great hunting land. On top of that is, I've been a member of the Village of Alden's Planning Commission for 15 years. And speaking on Dan's point is, not only are they doing it on farmland, next Monday we have a conditional use permit hearing going on where they're taking about 750 acres of land within the village limits that they're planning to do basically the same thing. And one of the big things is that I've had a 300-page presentation that I've read through, and the limits that the state tells us that we can do for zoning, and the county follows that. My hands are really tied as I see it right now. I haven't identified that there's a zoning, current thing is like residential, and I think it should be at least within the village, an industrial type zoning, which is a relatively simple thing to do. But beyond that, my hands are kind of tied of what, as a member of that planning commission, I have to really do.
Trin, why don't you address his comments?
As long as we're protecting the health and safety of our residents, we can put in zoning, ordinances, and other regulation you can come up with. The health and safety wind and health and safety solar ordinance are legal. They are right now standing. That is why we're going to court. Secondly, the zoning laws. We have had township who have done zoning laws that is based on farmland preservation. We do not believe that wind and solar correspond with farmland acres. And they have used those laws to then go in and say, well, if it's, tier 1, tier 2 farmland, it should not be going into wind and solar.
Well, that's in the Prairie Township. For the most part, that is Ag 1 and Ag 2, big times, with some little bits of, residential here and there, and then quite a bit of the state land and stuff like that for preservation.
But you guys have every right to protect your health and safety around here. The best thing you could do is do all of those things. Get them in your plan, get them on the books, because if you have nothing on the books, you are absolutely not protected at all. You can always remove something if it gets to be too dangerous for your township. The two township in Brighton and Plain that are fighting the lawsuit is actually being done by insurance lawyers. So as of yet, there's no cost to the townships. But many are stepping up. All the neighboring townships are stepping up to help them. Because if we don't fight this together, we don't have a chance. The energy lobby is the biggest lobby in Madison. And we are just small residents. But that does not mean we don't get a say on how our lives get to be lived going forward.
Yeah, but with my experience on 15 years on the board, I understand our zoning. We have nothing to say in our zoning to cover this. We are following the county and the state regs. That's the only thing we've got.
Thanks so much. Hey, Trin, so, we have ag use, ag land is taxed at a different rate as a result of, was that tax law change back in like the 1990s, I think it was. And that was meant to preserve farmland, right? Do these facilities, can they continue to be taxed at that rate after they built the facility?
No. I don't think so. I do not believe so.
Okay. Sir?
Hi, Chris Kowalski. I'm from St. Joseph, and I went to a town board meeting about 3 weeks ago, had a different issue I wanted to address, and I got blindsided by the fact that they showed a map up on the screen of where Excel had planned to put a line through, and it's about 6 houses down from mine. I never got a mailer, never got anything, so that was the biggest slap in the face wake up for this. Health, safety, massive anxiety over this. So that got me to doing a little bit of digging, especially with one of the comments that the Excel people were talking about. They mentioned, we've got a bunch of tools we can use, but if everything else fails, and they kind of quietly snuck in, there's always condemnation, and that's my biggest concern with this. So I did a little bit of digging, saw the little pink house, and realized St. Croix County is basically, it's our little pink house. Eminent domain, any town, any city, any government organization can condemn a Motel 6 and basically put in a Ritz-Carlton as long as they're doing it in the community interest. So my point of view on this is they're probably getting landowners and paying them overvalued now. Currently they're at 2/3 of what they need to be able to push this thing through. It's not going to be too hard then to basically say, well, it's in the public interest to eminent domain everybody else around them. That proposed line that goes basically through one of my neighbor's properties is farmland. I moved out there for that. I don't want that to happen. So I guess my concern would be they're going to start devaluing properties due to speculation, force everybody's hand, pay them bottom dollar. So I guess my question with that then is, what are you going to do to limit the government's ability to eminent domain private landowners for basically such a vast purpose?
Well, I can't change that law. I think Excel should make a commitment that they will not use eminent domain to take people's property.
That's right.
I mean, if I was going back and, as you have organized groups, I mean, that's one of the things I would do, is I'd go back to Excel and ask them to make a commitment that they won't use eminent domain, to take people's property.
Could your office write an open letter to Excel and ask them to make that commitment? I think if you could like turn up the public pressure on things like that, I think it would at least be embarrassing to them. And I think that'd be great. So sorry, Landis, I'm creating more work for you.
So, I'm not saying for sure that we'll do that, because this is kind of happening on the run here. But we'll take that back and decide if maybe that would be a good approach, is to go to Excel and to write a letter, a public letter, send it to Excel and release it to the public. So, yeah. John?
Go ahead. All right, I'm going to start with a different aspect. We're farmers, we've been here all of our lives, 65 years or 70 years. A lot of you people were never out here back then. Now we're looking at houses. Since we've been here, we've probably lost 1,000 acres to houses. A farmland that we're supposed to be saving.
Of rented land that I can't farm anymore. Because they came out here, they moved out
I
here.
see junkyards in these places.
I don't like it. I don't see that aspect too. I would like to start protect family farms, save American farmland, safeguards long-term food security. I will say this, Tom, you gave me a call, personal call. I never got to talk to you, I didn't get my message. But I will say this, I tried calling you back twice, but I would love to have a personal talk with you, about this situation. We, with USDA, always fooling around with our yields, amount of acres being planted. They just came out last week and reduced the yields for last year by 3 bushel an acre. Price of corn comes up a little bit. Still well below the cost of production. The cost of production right now is $5 a bushel. Right now we're between 4 and 4.50. It was below 3.
We lost more money than you're giving us.
By a long ways.
I mean, everybody's thinking that the USDA or the government's giving us this money.
No.
You took it away from us.
With the USDA.
We haven't had a farm bill since 2017. What's going on?
You guys out there aren't getting your work done, and I voted for you, Tom. I voted for the Trump, I voted Republican all the way, I do, I am solid. Drill, baby, drill. You have to get some stuff done out there, and stuff is not getting done, and it's disgusting to me. I had right down in my land, every Republican sign up possible. But yet, you're not getting it done. And I know you can't do it by yourself. We have a lot of problems, but when I see protect family farms, save American farmland, save, and then when the solar comes through, if a farmer has a chance to sell his land and make some money, everybody's up in terror, or they're just about it. But they moved out here. Do I think I like looking at all these developments out here? Probably not. And all the developments took all the land that I used to farm? That's not right either.
I'd be glad to put my ground into 30 years, because they can come back out in 30 years. The most topsoil they can touch on that is 10%. That's the max they can touch. And all they're doing is driving pilots in the ground.
I can tell you, CRP is a great program. I did it before. Farmland comes out after 10 years, that ground grows the best crops possible. It goes through a rest period. So what you're actually doing is protecting future land by doing this. But I'm not for, I completely condemn people that they come out here and not, the developments, whatever, I don't like it either. Where they don't do something for these people.
Excel has to does.
Excel has to come out and do something. If they come and build next to their house, they need to compensate. I don't go along with that part either.
And as far as wildlife, natural resources loves it.
They do.
They do.
I talked to them. They love it.
They can't wait for it, because what is it? Aaron Prairie. Prairie. What's this going into? Prairie, short prairie grass. That's what Aaron Prairie was, is prairie.
I mean, we have so many things here besides just going on around here that people aren't looking at the whole picture. But I don't blame anybody for not wanting to look at it, because I signed mine up for a solar system like 8 years ago.
We've had solar companies looking at us for 8 years.
And it did not go through.
We've been studying this for a long time, and there's a lot of positives. I could take a list out of my pocket. The positives are about that high, negatives are about this high.
But I will tell you this much, my house was on my 160, and I said, the only way you're gonna take my land is if you buy my land and buy my house, because I didn't wanna live by it either. So I don't blame anybody out here that don't wanna live by it. They need to be compensated or something,
But they probably should have put trees up in their backyards too. If you're next to a neighbor, you can't expect all the farms to supply you with what you got out here. The same with snowmobile trails. I love the snowmobile. I'm a snowmobile person.
They go across.
We take advantage of it.
They go across, I think, 6 different townships of ours in St. Croix County, plus up north in northern Wisconsin.
And Polk County.
And Polk County. I let anybody ride the trails. I don't, and people call me to hunt all the time. And I love to hunt. And by the way, hunting, can we do something about getting those wolves delisted too? I mean, let's go up on that one right now. Let's get some things going out here. That's why I voted for you and put the signs up.
You were gonna get it, I know you were gonna get
it.
We'll answer the wolf question, I'll be happy to.
I'd love to have a personal conversation with you. If you see me call you, or you see my name come up, I would love to have that personal conversation when you give me your message. So that's basically all I have to say.
But I think a lot of people are, I know it's gonna be a big deal if it goes through, but you don't know all the facts yet. I can tell you the truth, you don't know all the facts of the project. And that's part of it. I mean, part of it's in the contracts and so forth, and everybody's jumping to conclusions. I can tell you, we had another one that was gonna go through, it did go through. That one's actually okay. It's granted by the state, it's all permitted. But you know what? That company went around to all the neighbors, and all the neighbors agreed with what was gonna happen.
Well, what they did is they went around to all the neighbors and they paid them money.
They compensated.
To compensate the neighbors, neighboring houses, neighboring farmers that wanted to stay there. In fact, I had somebody call me at 10 o'clock at night, one of the neighbors. And she was in a house. She had a 5-acre lot. She called me and says, is this true that you guys are signing your land up for solar? I said, yes. She says, I am so delighted and happy for the amount of money they offered me. She says, I'm tickled with it. But XL, I don't think it's done that, but they should. That's my feeling.
But there's a lot more to it than everybody knows.
Let's get something done with the farm bill and the USDA. I'm totally against their false stuff they come out with all the time, Tom, because it really raises hell with my bottom line.
And you probably wouldn't, a lot of farmers probably wouldn't even think about doing this if the prices were decent.
Sure.
And that's a lot of it. I mean, when you're talking, break even's $5, and you're talking $4 corn, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? But we're stuck to it. So I guess.
Well, stay at the mic there, you guys.
Okay.
So when I turned 18, that's why I got the hell off the farm. Because
that wasn't
man,
that smart.
it's a real challenge. So I just want to thank you guys for coming up to the mic, because you give perspective to the people here in the audience.
I know we're all
I know I'm all numbered, but
No. We appreciate so much that you come up to the mic and share your side of the story, because it really does highlight, when commodity prices are what they are. And so let's talk about the future of farming. I mean, this has really been a bad period the last number of years here. And when you have an administration that was saying, we're going to go completely off of fossil fuels, what happened to fertilizer? Skyrocketed. Inflation has hit farmers as hard as anybody. Parts are they only up 20% in 4 years? No.
4 to 5.
Yes, exactly. Everything, it is hit so hard. That is what we're going to attempt to turn around. And it's why President Trump says drill, baby, drill. It is about bringing energy prices down, because that is one of the things that's going to benefit farmers, is if we can bring one of the major expenses that you have in putting in your crop every year, we are going to be working towards getting that done. And I'm hoping also that with the new agriculture secretary, that some of this stuff that you've been talking about here is going to be dealt with, and we'll get a better return for our farmers here, because President Trump believes in the farmers of America, and that we have to produce our own food in this country, and you guys got to be able to survive out on the farm.
He's one of the only presidents I've ever heard talk about a farm.
Yeah.
For 10, 20 years. For 10, 20 years.
And I think you're going to see the trade policies are going to become better, as he will use tariffs to help farmers, and hang in there. Here's the thing. Here's what ultimately bothers. Just so you guys know, here's what ultimately bothers me about all this: is subsidies being paid to these developers that are $50,000.
Can I make a point?
Yeah, we gotta make a point.
Did you ever figure out what that is per house that's what it is per house that's getting subsidized? Electricity per house? $1,600.
Yeah, because we know
So
exactly.
that house has electricity.
So it's actually only $1,600 per house that's subsidized. At 50,000 an acre.
So the subsidy is $1,600 a house?
Per house is what it amounts to.
The amount of houses divided by the
amount of
subsidies.
And you're saying that's supposed to make me feel better?
No, I'm not saying
30 years. I think it's a lot worse spent than that, Tom.
But let's go what does oil get subsidized and everything else. There's subsidies for everything in this country.
You know what, as well as I do, everything is subsidized.
Yeah, but it's enormous. It's enormous that's going to wind and solar.
Well, it's a lot less than oil.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys.
Okay, all right,
Thank you,
I'm glad you gave us the opportunity to talk about that. I would like to have that personal.
Oh, before you go ahead. You go ahead, and then I'm gonna talk about wolves.
Oh, sure.
Yes, I hope you do.
Yeah, so every year, or not every year, but the U.S. Energy Information Administration, it's part of the U.S. Department of Energy, they have a report that shows the subsidies by resource type. And oil and gas are actually net taxpayers. People talk about oil and gas subsidies. The subsidies that are available for oil and gas are usually low-income energy assistance programs for people who can't afford their propane, they can't afford their electric bill. There's a state, it's called LIHEAP. The state issues funds to people who need help with their energy costs. Those are the primary subsidies for oil and gas in this country. And then you have normal business expenses like depreciation that you take on your tractor, right? So they have those sorts of tax advantages for depletion and all that stuff. So I just wanted to kind of speak to that. And when you look at that EIA report, you see that wind and solar get so much more in subsidies than any other form of energy. It's really kind of sad. But talk about wolves.
Yeah. So we just reintroduced last week the delisting of the wolf bill. Last year we referred to it as the Trust of Science bill. We changed it now to the Pet and Livestock Protection Act. And but that is introduced last week, and we passed it through the House last year. I'm hoping we get it through the House again this year, and maybe be able to get it through the Senate. I think you'll see a 2 or 3 pronged approach here. There'll be legislation. Ideally, we would do it via legislation, because then it's statutory, and we'd have no judicial review, so these judges can't step in and relist the wolf once again. Hopefully that can happen. But I think you'll also see the Trump administration via the Fish and Wildlife Service, that they will have probably a parallel path they're going to go to delist the wolf, just like happened in 2021. So
would it turn into like out there in the western states, how they got that through then? Like
that's what we're hoping.
That's what you're hoping you can do.
That's what we want to do with our bill, just like they did in Montana, Idaho. Yeah, that's what we're hoping, if we can do it via legislation.
So they won't be able to put another stop on it again, and Judge can't?
Judge can't. Yep, we remove judicial review from it. Now, if we can't get it done that way, because it will take 60 votes in the Senate, contact Senator Baldwin, tell her to follow through. But you will also see them try to do it administratively via the Fish and Wildlife Service. So, yeah. Matt?
Yeah,
Yeah, just get really close.
all right. I was gonna say, first of all, thank you. Back in 21, 22, you stepped in and helped us with the town of Ceylon part. You were very effective at that point during that fight, because many of the things people are talking about today, St. Croix County's already faced. This isn't a new issue for St. Croix County. My concern and why I want to stand up and address it now is because of the fact that obviously we need a new governor in the state of Wisconsin. We have a president switched over, but now we need a new governor, because you're right, that office, same thing with refugee resettlement, the governor was the one standing up when you were standing up for that issue as well. However, there's it's called, I think some people in this room already referenced it, that one was called the Northern Prairie Solar Project. That one is our test case, so everybody should write that down. The Northern Prairie Solar Project. That's the one that Landis, thank God Landis took the phone call and fought that with us, but from your office. But that one is the model that shows us exactly the process that they went through. Representative Moses had taken me to the town hall they had, so I watched all this with BMF and things like that. And all the representatives that were in that room to sell this project to in the town hall were all from different states, New York, Florida, nobody was from Wisconsin, Minnesota. And so I'd be really curious for you guys to follow up, because I've reached out since this issue to the same representatives, and they're not taking the phone calls anymore. They're not responding to the emails anymore. But that environmental assessment was done. And so they went top to bottom with it. So they do the assessments, because you can go on there and do that. The problem is, you're right, it's out of the governor's office. So here's my proposal for anybody sitting in this room. If we want to make an impact, the biggest thing we can do is, that map is great, but if we can assemble enough people in St. Croix County, trust me, this works, and we can create a human map. Every resident who lives in that area stands up and stands around the houses, and we get somebody with a drone that flies over. That is how the American public locally will hear and see this issue. Why do you think in Congress they put those big, huge, new graphics up? All the milk and all that, that hits the human thing. So we as citizens could all agree to go out to this area where they're doing this, and all stand and look straight up. And we have a drone. That will sell nationwide. And that's something that Congressman Tiffany can use in Washington. See, our representatives represent us, but they need us to do the work. I think what happens in my experience is, we sit to these things, we talk to them, and we think, oh, we're good. But they need us to fight with them. So if we could try to follow up on that project and see A to Z, I think we can maybe take that to the Trump administration. I think that's where it has to go right now, is to the administration. But I don't think that executive order is going to stop this long term. But it could give us that buffer until we get to the next governor's race in Wisconsin. That's my opinion. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thank you, Tom, and everybody else here, and everybody for coming out. Heard statement here, and I was wondering if it was going to hit on a number of the things that I came off and touched a little bit. But I think there's more information here that expands what we're really looking at for the future. So I'm just going to read this. Energy security is national security. Sound energy policies to bring down prices at the pump, in the grocery store, and on Americans' utility bills is the first in the order of operations to address the newly declared national energy emergency. Energy is the foundation of our economy. It underpins our military. Without energy, we don't do anything. We don't have a military. We don't have manufacturing. We have nothing. The demand for electricity right now is going to increase by at least 50% over the next 10 to 15 years. AI alone will add 6 to 7% to the overall consumption in this country and worldwide. It's going to be a big problem, and America must move fast to avert a national electricity crisis. With this in mind, a major concern is the plan to deconstruct the King Power Plant. The 2024 report by Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, or MISO, shows a stark reality. When new renewables are dropped onto the grid, installed capacity goes up, but accredited capacity goes down. That is what you really get. Despite adding 50 gigawatts of installed capacity by 2042, accredited capacity will drop by 30 gigawatts as reliable power plants are replaced with intermittent sources. This gap between installed and accredited capacity shows why America must preserve its existing reliable power sources rather than replacing them with intermittent alternatives to prevent an energy crisis. The Heritage Foundation also says this and agrees with it. The scale of the looming capacity shortfall is staggering. Coal plants representing more than 15% of America's electrical generation are expected to close by 2032, just as demand is expected to decline by at least 15%. That's a potential shortfall of 30% of the 1,200 gigawatts of generation capacity that could be needed by 2030, equivalent of 400 average-sized nuclear plants. Congress and the new administration will have to move fast to avert what could be years of soaring prices and dangerous blackouts. I also want to bring attention to another relatively new discovery, haven't heard, don't know, who knows what about. That's natural hydrogen, also known as white hydrogen. There are significant stores of white hydrogen right under our feet in the mid-continent rift, which underlays Lake Superior and much of Iowa, Minnesota, and Michigan. The rift brought vast quantities of minerals to the upper layers of Earth's crust, including iron-rich minerals that could form hydrogen. Using a conservative range of values, one model predicts a mean volume of hydrogen that could supply the projected global demand for thousands of years. The bad news is, much of this hydrogen currently may be inaccessible. The good news is, if even a small fraction of this estimated volume could be recovered, there would likely be enough hydrogen across all the global deposits to last for hundreds of years.
Sir.
Could be a renewable.
Sir, we do need to, we need to wrap.
Okay, let me get to the end then.
And you can share that document with us.
I will. In the end, one sentence. And finally, I'm not really directly opposed to the destruction of the solar field, but why don't they build it in Minnesota swampland instead of prime Wisconsin forest, field, and farm?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Scotty Ard. My associate with me is Brenda Salzik. We have a great deal of experience in the PCS. We worked with the town of Forest. Brenda was a resident. And I see one of our other supporters in the front row. For over 10 years, we fought a wind turbine development in an area of 36 square miles, which essentially gave every household a wind turbine. Now, this came under PSC 128 under the merchant power plant language, which means that they can't sell directly to consumers. But what happens is they skirt all of the development requirements under state law, under county code, in order to sell their production to a larger utility such as XL. Now, Forest was able to successfully fend off, but it was 10 years, over $300,000, and there's only 865 people in the town of Forest. This group assembled here, those watching, those on Facebook, those in social media, you're in the fight of your life and your clock is ticking. Once Excel files for the CPCM, all the voices in the world will not help you. The hard lesson that had to be learned almost too late for Forest, get legal representation. This is a legal process. If you do not know the procedure, if you are unfamiliar with legal procedure, especially on the utility scale, you can write all the comments you want to, and please do not write directly to the PSC commissioners. That is considered ex parte communication once a CPCM is filed or once the case has been taken up by the PSC. Please don't do that. But do look at organizing this group on another night to talk about your plans as to how you will legally address this, because this is a legal issue. Our legislature, if they can move like lightning, they may be able to get PSC 128 suspended, Chapter 66, all the adjoining languages. But that's like calling for a Hail Mary, and we don't have that kind of time. We're in January. Excel has almost finished all of their meetings with townships, communities, and municipalities that would be affected by this project. If you want to stop it, you need to organize your group, get a 501c3 formed so that you can fundraise, and find an attorney. And I'm not talking just any attorney. I'm talking energy or gas, environmental, or constitutional law. One who is trained in administrative rules, because you're going to be going up against the state language. It is very complicated. We both have legal boxes filling our storerooms with all of the documents from the forest fight. It is long, it is arduous, and it can be costly. And in this issue, because this project has been on MISO 4 years?
It's actually not on the grid right now. This project's already left the queue. There's 2 more on the queue for this area, solar, and the battery energy storage are on there as well. So I feel your pain, but you gotta fight, and you gotta fight hard and fast.
Thank you, Council.
Can I just make a brief comment for that? So not only do you have to fight locally for this, when these cases start going up the court ladder, it's going to end in Supreme Court. Right now, we have an election coming up in April, and we need Brad Schimmel on that court. So when these cases get in front of the Supreme Court, we have a fighting chance. The organization she is talking about, we're already in the process of creating. That's the CCOA-WI I was talking about earlier. We're already trying to create the 501c3, and we're already trying to get everybody organized together. So please join us, and we will help.
Sorry, just Josh Weinbein, resident of Hammond Township. Tonight I'll drive home into that circle that you saw the map of, and I'll go right into the middle of it. There's no panels there today, but you know, they plan to put them surrounding my home. I appreciate all the work everyone's done here, all the comments. You know, I hope I can come home from one of these meetings. I've been to several of these, and you know, my 10-year-old asked me if we're gonna have solar panels out back. So, you know, I'll tell her I don't know still tonight, but I appreciate everyone's efforts, everyone coming together here, because it is impactful for the future. And if you're not in one of those developments today that's in the circle, I'd say give it 10 years and we will, because once the infrastructure's here, I feel like it's only logical that it's gonna spread. So, but I appreciate everybody's comments. I guess I just had one question for you, Scotty. If there's any resources for funding, you know, when I think law, all of a sudden, you know, dollar signs hit my eyes and I go, there's no way we can fight that. We don't have the money.
Actually, when you have a group this large and you're dealing with this much square acreage of communities, municipalities, and the fallout to adjacent communities, once you start a concerted effort to fundraise, people will get on board, and you have the ability to fundraise. We're talking, I mean, let me put it this way, if Salvation Army, with our small little group, could get out and hit the bricks and raise $85,000 in a matter of months, with all these folks, I'm pretty sure you can meet a goal to fund your legal defense. Because everybody in St. Croix County is going to be affected by this project.
Yeah, thank you. And again, yeah, right. The circle's this big now, but it's going to get this big. So, you know, everybody, I'm glad there's so much attention here and appreciate all the efforts and the time.
We're going to take one more person. Go ahead, and then we'll wrap.
My name is Don here. born and raised in Aaron Township, graduated from this high school almost 60 years ago. Like you, Tom, I left the farm when I was 18 years old, but we still have the farm property in our family, over 150 years. I spent my working career, in finance and underwriting developments. I've yet to see a contract that isn't heavily skewed in favor of the author. And I guess by curiosity, I hear all these great stories about all this money that's coming down the pike. Who's guaranteeing those funds? Who's actually signing the contract? Who's the company that the landowner is signing a contract with? Because usually it's a shell game of companies, and there's a lot of protection. And there's no indemnity there for the owner probably, if they're drawn into a lawsuit down the road for environmental reasons. Could you comment on some of those things?
Absolutely. So what we're seeing in the contract is that they will come out and tell you that you will have a 30-year contract and they're going to pay you over $1 million for this. But when you actually get into the nitty-gritty of the contract, we're finding that most of the contracts are 30-day contracts for the landowner, while they're 30-year contract for the company. Now, in my incident, we had 2 terms of 10 years, extendable terms that the landowner could not refuse. So if they wanted to prolong that contract for another 20 years, they could. Now, the money stops the day they're not making money. The money don't stop when your contract is out. So what we're seeing is that a lot of these contracts, one, the company will come in, they'll sell you the contract. It works kind of like a mortgage. That company builds the stuff, they sell it to a new company. On average, they sell you contracts 4 times. Now you tell me, what kind of customer service are you going to get after that contract has been switched over for 4 different companies? Now, our biggest worry, or one of our biggest worries, is what we're seeing is that when you get to company 4, and you are 10 years into this, and these things are starting to fail, they're not worth repairing. So what does the company do, right? There's a clause in there that says they're supposed to decommission these and take them away, but not if they go bankrupt. So they go bankrupt, and they leave the landowners to clean up the mess. They leave the counties and the township to clean up the mess. That is what we're seeing happening in other places. This is what we're warning about. You should be able to sign a contract if you want to. Just be aware that there are definitely risks involving us.
Can I make a comment? It's the NSP that signs the contract. NSP has got to make payments until it is cleaned up. So it is NSP. If NSP goes down, guess what? We're all gone. I mean, Northern States Power, that's the head company of Excel. I mean, so I don't think you really have to worry about NSP too much.
They have filed bankruptcy several places.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap here, you guys. And Trin, if you had a final word you wanted to say. Isaac? Everybody good? Hey, so I want to, if you give Trin and Isaac a hand for. I want to thank all of you that attended this. Regardless of where your perspective comes from on this, I really appreciate that you came out and expressed your views, came to listen, whatever the case may be. You're sure welcome to contact my office at any time. We will be looking at a letter to Excel in regards to using eminent domain. Not sure what we'll do yet, but we're going to consider doing that letter. And yeah, for sure. And but once again, thank you. My ultimate concern is the enormous subsidies that are being paid out here, and we're $36 trillion in debt in America, and we got to get control of it. Otherwise, we're not going to get control of inflation that is chewing up everybody's paychecks and is devaluing these guys' crops that are coming out of the field each year. So anyhow, thank you, everybody. Don't hesitate to contact my office if you have any questions.